All right, Kyle. If I am correct, we are live on our Digitized YouTube channel. And here's the awesome news to kick off today. We just passed 100 subscribers. To a lot of people, that doesn't sound like so many, but to me, I don't know about you, it's extremely important. It's a huge milestone, having just started our channel just a few weeks ago. And all of the folks that are coming and subscribing or engaging and chatting with us and dropping us messages in the chat. And you and I have been responding to all of those. It's just been an awesome feeling, and getting feedback that we're actually helping someone here and there out in the world has just been incredible. I love it very much, and I just wanted to kind of kick off today's show with the idea that we're making it happen. It's working. And just so you know, Kyle, we are currently live only on YouTube. In just a few minutes, I will spin us up out there on Twitter and Facebook and Twitch. But I'll do that after we kind of get the ball rolling here. And so, Kyle, how are you today? What's new in your world besides shaky internet connections and still continuing to be stuck at home?
Yeah, hey Ken, it's great to see you again, and welcome everybody to season 2, episode 3 of Digitized Live, where we are here to help you unlock your digital potential. And for me, it's just, it's embracing ambiguity, embracing the unknown, and applying everything that we have built the show for, which is unlocking our digital identities and our digital selves. And I think for both of us, Ken, the last few weeks have just been stacking even more and more extraordinary in terms of the overwhelming demand for digital events or for digital coaching, just to understand how can you navigate and get some really strong balance in this environment. We are now, I think it's 10 weeks in, so that's almost like officially like the 8-week COVID sprint, and it'll be very interesting to see what we've been able to build and create in the last 8 weeks. But also with this show, there were two thoughts that we had. One was just to do kind of a stock take, because we didn't do a show last week because we were with a client live, and it probably is really good for the viewers to give some understanding of the types of formats and the types of events that we are running, and just how people are problem solving for those things. Everything from corporate events to large things to intact team meetings, those kinds of things could be a really great place to go just on learnings and tools and tricks. And then the other is just what we are learning and about what has been birthing and showing up in the last, eight to 10 weeks. Because I'm sure for you too, Kent, there's just overwhelming articles out there about what is the new normal, what is the unknown. There's still all this ambiguity. You've just seen announcements from Facebook and Twitter and others where they're going 100% remote. So I think that we are right at the cusp of seeing the world even unlock a greater sense of digital potential. So we'd love to just go and explore in those particular areas. What's on your mind today, Ken?
Well, I would say the last week and a half for me in particular, there's even been almost sort of a struggle with really, and we've even talked about this on the show, but there's been a renewed wave of struggle with work-life balance.
Mm,
I literally feel like I'm at war with myself some days
mm,
because I know what I need to do from a home perspective, a family's being a teacher perspective. There's been this new batch of emails we've received from our children's schools
mm-hmm,
that is definitely not helpful. And it's not that they're not trying. It's just that I want to actually, we should make a note of this. I want to come back and maybe we can find a spot today to talk about this. But what I think the school should really be doing for this quote new normal.
mm-hmm,
Um, I don't think I don't think it's hit them yet. What has to happen. We'll
mm-hmm,
see. But those are the things that are on my mind. Is really, well, I'll tell you. Here's a real example. So this last weekend was a holiday weekend, and
mm-hmm,
I needed the holiday weekend.
mm-hmm,
So on Friday, I was hanging out, and I just put my phone aside and was enjoying the afternoon. Took off just a little bit early to hang out and be with kids. And then everything was great. We had a nice evening. We had dinner. Then the next morning, I woke up, my phone buzzed, and I grabbed it. And it was a WhatsApp message, and it was one of those that I would call a faux emergency. It was an emergency on their side for sure. They were feeling like it was an emergency. But from my side, I was like, it's 7 a.m. on Saturday morning. I'm not so sure that's an emergency of that caliber, So I literally deleted WhatsApp from my phone right then and there because it messed up my whole morning. And so I literally removed the app. And I can tell you the rest of my weekend was so peaceful. Now, come Monday, Tuesday in this case, I didn't pick it up again until Tuesday. I had hundreds of messages that had come in to me over the weekend. Now, normally I would service these messages. I would pay attention to them. I would read them in cases I would respond. So this is just a real example of me taking back a little bit of the life side of the work-life balance just for a few days. And man, I can't tell you how much better I felt come Tuesday morning. Just my mind was clearer. I could focus on things that I needed to get done again. And it's just a real example of this new digital life we live and frankly, how intrusive it can be. I don't have that Zoom fatigue thing because I've been on Zoom for many, many years. But people were feeling that. But I had WhatsApp fatigue, right? And I just wanted some time for my family. So I took it. I didn't even tell anybody. And, aside from a couple of messages that were like, why didn't you? It was fine. I think that's the real message. It was fine. Nobody was upset. Everybody was fine. And so, that's really been top of my mind over the last few days is not taking care of your duties, right? You still have to be available if there's a true emergency, but really rethinking in this new digital reality that we're living in, what is an emergency? What does constitute calling your coworker at 7 a.m. on a Saturday? Really? I mean, did you do that before? Those are the things that are on my mind, Kyle.
It's a fascinating one. I can strongly relate, and I think it's something that we're doing on our side to try and lay down those what we're now calling our digital boundaries. Just because we're doing it with the kids, we're doing it for ourselves. Because what we've noticed, of course, is as the pressure mounts for us as parents and people that run businesses and own businesses, we're also finding for those like you and I, Ken, a lot of our client base is global because we were built to get on airplanes and travel to other destinations around the world. Now, what is a spill out from that is time zone. And so like this morning, every day this week, I'm on from 5 a.m. till 8, and then I've got some family time. And then I'm in the normal working day, then we've got family time and dinner time. And then I'm literally on from 8 p.m. till 11. And it's very interesting how that day has flexed. Now, some of that's by choice. What I try to do is minimize how many days this particular week and last week and next week are just uncharacteristically, there's things happening more frequently. I'm also noticing what's quite interesting, and I think this is where days have blended into each other. So I think the reclamation of the weekend and reclamation of these moments is super, super vital. And then the other is that, like everything else that's exponentially speeding up, I think the rate of people wanting to get information out into the world, to stay relevant, to stay positive, to keep the narrative going, that is increasing. Before we would say, all right, I have a physical event once a month or maybe once every few months, and there's a lot of lead time and planning that goes into that. Now it's like, I'll get a call and say, hey, we thinking of hosting a webinar in 2 days, could you jump on? And it's, they're those types of things that are speeding up radically. That is increasing, I think, the compressing for all of us, where it's not just a frequency of meeting. I think people are getting down to the idea of that too many meetings is never a good thing. Now what I'm noticing is that the meetings are actually around, now there's this urgency for output. There's an urgency to produce. There's an urgency to stay out there communicating, because everyone's out communicating on all the social platforms, that now we're needing to produce and create And I'm noticing that the time frames and the time scales, I think there's the same way that how there's instant availability where we can just click on and now meet people all around the world, which is amazing, and we're getting better access. I think one of the things that is falling away is the quality that it takes, the time in order to achieve a really good quality production or really good quality content. So there's definitely an increase in frequency, and I think that's blending into weekends, that's blending into mornings, that's blending into evenings, it's blending right across. And so I think what you're doing and what you're stating here is the reclamation of, the digital boundaries is critical. And I was recently at this mastermind, which was around digital capabilities, really around efficiency tools. And one of the co-founders there of this company, he mentioned that his name is Nick Sonnenberg. What he mentioned, and it's a tool that I'm actually starting to embrace. I didn't really do it straight out the gate, but I'm embracing it now. Is that he says we are overwhelmed with so many channels of communication. You've got text, then you've got WhatsApp, you've got Slack, you've got Trello boards, you've got email, you've got multiples of inboxes, you've got Google Chat. There's just so many ways people can get access to you. And of course, the traditional phone call, that's the thing. Or actually physically knocking on. Yeah.
What is that?
But what he was saying is that try channel all your work stuff to email. Keep text messages, text message streams purely for personal, and then channel work channels and efficiency to things like Slack or Trello. So if you are working on a particular project and there's a committed, agreed timeline, then work the tool like Asana or Trello or Slack. Even WhatsApp's kind of on the edge because that's technically like a texting tool, which would generally be for personal, which is interesting because a lot of people like us, we also use WhatsApp as project management tool. And then you use email to really channel work. So what that allows you to do is manage other people's urgency of your time. Let me pause there and see.
Do that. I think you got to go back on that one. But just two quick things. One, the concept of reclaiming the digital boundaries. I think they're the work-life barriers. They're boundaries that we've always had. They've just been physical and clear. You drive home from work, you're done. The digital ones are so murky. I mean, we all struggle with it. And then the other thing is, and I love this joke, and everybody thinks it's super corny, but I'm going to say it anyway. This whole time zone thing. When you get called now to do a keynote, right, or a talk, and it's digital. We're presenting just like you and I are here right now. We could do a co-keynote, in fact, just like this, and pipe it anywhere in the world. But oftentimes it's from Asia. Or it's from India, it's from China, it's from oh my gosh, I mean all these different places. Europe is for us plus 9 hours. And so I made the mistake once of thinking I had signed up to do a talk for CT, Central Time, but I'd missed that little E in the middle. It was actually CET. And so then I finally get the calendar invite and I'm like, oh no, it's like in the middle of the night, and it was a 5-hour engagement. So I literally ended up staying up all night, and toward the end, they're all like, Kent, you need to go, you're done. And I was like, thank you all very much. I would just like to say that I am perfectly capable of manufacturing my own jet lag right here at home. No planes needed. Sorry.
No planes needed.
And I did. The only good news about that is it's much easier to recover from that kind of jet lag for whatever reason than it is it's not jet lag, is it though? It's time zone lag, but as it is something like actually flying on a jet. But I have learned how to manufacture my own jet lag at home.
There's going to the sleep experts that we've been connected with. They're saying that, and I've become so much more conscious of this now, is that if you have less than 7 hours sleep a night, and I know we've got a couple of shows in season 1 where we've gone deep on really managing, and it might be good to revisit those, really managing our agenda, like our daily agendas, our weekly agendas. But one of the most critical things to perform effectively in a digital environment like this, because we're in our own room, right? And you're having to bring the joy and bring the energy, and and stay committed, and you're staring at this little light and this little camera over here. But without regular sleep and actual digital breaks from eyes, because it's a short distance, and also sleep, they're saying anything under 7 hours, like 7 to 8 hours, we do drop around 30% efficiency for every hour less that we sleep. And what actually happens psychologically and also physically, it's the similar symptoms to being drunk. It's the equivalent that when you are on 6 hours sleep or 5 hours sleep or 4 hours sleep, the body, not that you're technically drunk, but it just has that same sort of, you're slightly off, your hearing's a little off, you're a little slower cognitively, all those kinds of things, which we can all understand, which is why when we have little sleep, we may take more coffee and take more stimulants, but it's actually compounding the same thing. And then the more that you stack this digital experiences without getting real sunlight, without being able to kind of stretch, get up, leave, take resets, take breaks, reconnect with your body, it keeps compounding. And then that jet lag that you're talking about just never actually goes away. You're just
Right.
literally trying to operate in constant state of jet lag. So I think what you're talking about, to kind of delete apps, and at least to kind of, because this device is with us everywhere now. And so you're right, which is like, if I'm no longer, I'm not completely tethered to everything that's in the office and the desktop, because it just carries with me everywhere. And it's really hard from the psychological and also the serotonin response, right? That instant gratification, that if it goes ping, 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 and someone's connecting to you, you want to look at it. And then as soon as it turns out to be like a task or an urgency need or something else, the stress symptoms show up in the body. And when the stress symptoms show up in the body, we carry those receptors into everything else that we do. So I think now more than ever, like laying down digital boundaries and reclaiming your agenda, reclaiming your day, and really trying to educate people around you to structure with you that this could be a whole set of new, let's call them decision-making principles or value drivers or some form of doctrine that I would imagine would emerge from this, which is going to be fascinating for the future of work, right? If you think Twitter and Facebook and all these major companies are saying, look, we're going to be 100% remote, what are the new codes of conduct? What are the new ways of working that we are all going to start, connecting to?
Well, I can tell you that a really good one is what's behind you on your camera.
Yeah.
People are not paying attention. And I get it. You've got kids, you've got pets, you've got all kinds of things going on. But there are some things you can control. There could be anything behind you, Kyle, but it doesn't matter because we put a green screen back there.
We're in
But,
the digitized abyss.
But what if there's a bed behind you? Is that a good idea?
Mm-hmm.
Would you show up? I ask this question to people all the time. Would you show up in a conference room with your bed? Right? I mean, no, you wouldn't. You would not drag your bed physically into a conference room. That is completely ridiculous. It would send all kinds of weird messages that you're not meaning to send. And and it's just, I get it, limited space. And I was telling this actual story to my wife that I've been on a conference call, more than one, many. So if you're hearing this and you're like, oh God, there's a bed in my background, I was on a call with Kent. No, I'm not talking specifically about you. I've seen this many times. And when I travel, which I haven't now for a while, same as you, but when I do and I'm in a hotel room, oftentimes it's a single room, everything's in there, and they lovingly put the desk right where the bed is behind your camera if you put your laptop on the thing. I almost always, if there's any way at all to do it, I pull that desk out from the wall, put my chair on the other side. I'd rather have a blank white wall behind me. At least I can maintain a degree of professionalism that way, or ideally a window or at least something that looks a little nicer. I can tell you, though, I've been told by the hotel staff that they don't appreciate it when you rearrange the furniture in the hotel room.
Of course.
But whatever, I mean, they should think about that, so I think that's an interesting one as well. So these are the kinds of little tips, and I love the idea of making a list for that. Maybe we can try to rattle off a quick list. So that's one, don't have a bed behind you in your scene, but there's these boundaries. Think about the time zone of your colleague. Think about if they've asked you in a sort of a social contract way, like I do. I ask everyone I work with to respect a 3-hour window every day that I call family time. It's for me. It's from 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. Pacific, and it allows me to really be present with my family at that critical dinner, wind down, bedtime, go out for a walk stage that really improves the overall quality of our life. And I committed to my family to try to be there 100% of the time for that. I don't make it, right? That's an OKR. It's a stretch goal, but I'm pretty close. And that would be another one. What are one or two of those little boundaries, kind of digital boundaries, digitized boundaries? I don't know. Maybe we're inventing that right now.
I think so. I think digital boundaries is probably is going to be its own course. It's probably going to be its own program. I love the idea of making a running list, going obviously spontaneous right now, and it will be great for any of the viewers. I see we have viewers watching. I see some people interacting in the chat. Please also text us or send us what are your digital boundaries, and we could, as we grab them in real time, we'll share those on this program right now. But for me, I'm actually I'm actually getting pretty disciplined with this one. I have felt the fatigue myself, and I've also felt the blend, which means that it does cut into personal times. I felt like I've sacrificed some exercise time. I felt sacrificed just some physical refresh time with my wife, time with the kids, because those spontaneous things do hit. So there's a couple of things that I'm trying to build in. One is I have a morning slot, say after doing very early things. If I know I'm doing very early things, I do take a break. And then what I try to do is either read physical books or definitely spend time with the kids. There's time in the morning for homeschooling, which is super important to get everything set up. The second one is having a hard start and a hard stop time to the day. I think that it's very important for us to say, it's like if you did anything, I'm going to paint the house, I'm going to do some gardening, I'm going to go do shopping, I'm going to do the laundry, I'm going to go visit a friend. We have a hard stop and we have a hard stop, hard start and stop date time. But what's kind of interesting with online, and because our devices are so tethered to us, we don't actually give ourselves hard stop and hard start times. And so I'm really trying to lock it in, like, oh, this is the time I'm in front of the screen. This is the time that I'm not. When the time that I'm not going to carry the device with me. Those are legitimate, like, rest times. That's one really important one. And then we've got a 3-2-1 rule. I haven't been doing so great in the last 2 weeks because I've had too many late night things. But the 3-2-1 is stop eating 3 hours before you go to bed. Get off of all screens. Sorry, stop working 2 hours before bed, which I'm sure a lot of people say, like, well, that's hard. And it is hard. Stop being on screens 1 hour before you go to sleep. And so what that means is if you give yourself a 60-minute buffer before you're going to rest, it actually helps your brain and your eyes to calm down, because we constantly have these flickers here. So for me, I'm trying to create a buffer in space that it's not the first thing I do in the morning. I actually wait. I first take care of some other things. I have my morning rituals, then get on the device, have a very hard midday break, and then make sure that I quit being on technology, and especially like work-based technology, at least an hour before I actually go to sleep. And then I may read a book or do something else. Those are a couple of things that I'm finding are helping me to maintain some sense of normalcy. And it's actually when I verbally, this is a very important one for everybody watching. It's very important to verbally share with others your standards, your digital boundaries. We can call them digital boundaries, but your standards. And what I mean by your standards is that if you can entrain people around you to know that this is how you operate, they will actually respect those. I mean, they'll push back, but after a while, they'll start respecting those boundaries. Those are a couple that come to mind for me. Ken, have you got some others?
I think, one that I recently saw, I was on Twitter, and someone that I follow on Twitter said that she had done a couple of things in order to completely 10x the quality of her life. And one of the ones that stuck with me was, it's your morning ritual, basically. And what she said was, very specifically, don't pick up your phone and start diving into things like email, instant messaging, and all those things until you have completed your one most important task for that day. And I thought, is that possible? Sometimes my tasks are substantial and they might take a while. What would happen if I actually tried that most of the time, I think is the way I would consider it. And so what I've been trying to do is, in the evening of the prior day, look at what I did do, look at what I didn't do that I probably should have done, and then take that one thing that I really should have done and didn't do, put that on the sort of the agenda for the next morning, and then try out that tip of trying to knock that thing out before I start to engage in answering all the WhatsApp, answering all the emails, diving into the meetings. Now, this is not always possible for me because some of my days start with European members of my team. I'm in California, so I'm already in a meeting by 7 a.m., sometimes earlier. So I can't, I don't have time to complete anything before that. But I can still at least get partway there and maybe leave the email and WhatsApp stuff, which are my two primary channels, alone until after I have those morning meetings. Get something important done, something meaningful. So today, it was a bunch of contract templating for one of my companies. And it's something I've been needing to do. I connected with the other team members that needed to know, and I think we made a lot of progress this morning. And that's something that's been dogging me for over a week. So I think that would be my last one to throw out there today. But with this sort of list that you and I have, and feel free to throw in another if you like, this is a great foundation, and we'll go out and gather this from the feed and be able to maybe put that in a blog post or something so that we start this out. But yeah, it would be pretty great to have that kind of checklist almost. Weekly checklist. I don't think you have to look at it every day, but if you do it weekly, it will remind you enough to keep yourself on the right side of almost being digitally healthy.
That's right.
It is hard. And I mean, it is not impossible to find yourself with work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I know there are a lot of people out of work, so but I'm sensitive to that when I say such things. But for those of us whose work is already or primarily digital, we're feeling that. And I think folks who are possibly even off work right now, and I know many, they're about to go back to work in many cases, and it's going to be like this. It hasn't even hit them yet. Well, so there's this next wave coming, of folks that are going to need these kinds of tips.
Yeah, the skilling up process is one of the biggest things as we stay very connected to clients and understanding the larger legacy companies that we have been fortunate enough to, spend a lot of time with even before this pandemic. They're all trying to navigate. Everyone's had to make some really difficult decisions, whether it's furloughing, whether it's reduction of workforce, whether it's shifting business models, whether it's shifting how they're going to work going forward. One of the greatest things that I'm noticing that leaders are wrestling with, especially when it comes to digitizing their business, because this is really what is happening. It's a digitization version of their business. Like right now, what's interesting is I keep reminding people because we take it for granted. But as you're looking at myself and Kent, these are digital versions of that. This is a digital version of a show. This is us digitized. When we meet in person, someday down the road, as we get to meet, it'll be like, oh, I've watched you. It's the same as we watch characters on movies. We suddenly see them in real life and we feel like we know them and we feel like we're connected to them because it's a digital version of them. It's a digital version. But there's this piece here that this next really big paradigm shift is going to be it's one single source of leadership is not going to have all the answers because everyone's going through this at the same time, which is creating an opportunity for us to group together like we're doing here with this show, like we're doing with Digitize and unlocking your digital potential, It's bringing a conversation together, having all of us contribute to that conversation so that we can co-create and co-design what that future is going to be for us. And so I think one of the biggest takeaways from this show today, Kent, is, and I've written down a few things here, but setting up your healthy digital guidelines or your digital boundaries is super, super critical, because there is no norm. So if we're chasing someone else's agenda, if we're thinking this is how it has to be, I actually would really push back on that and highly disagree and say, I don't think it's been defined yet. So when you test to see where your limits are and where your uncomfortable level is and where it feels more stressful than joyful, like those are good signals in science for you to pay attention. Like, oh, I'm good. Like what you just did, the perfect example coming all the way back around to how you started, Ken, is like, I deleted WhatsApp from my phone. I'll take care of it when I'm at my desktop. Amazing. That's a really powerful digital boundary. What would others who are watching and viewing this, what are yours? What would you like yours to be? And, and I think so as Kent and I, we'll probably go explore this deeper and start to understand that it's up to us to co-create what these new rules of engagement are. And I think that if we can step into it with a healthy mindset and a healthy perspective, and that we're pushing to optimize our productivity and energy, not take away from it, because no one's ever been able to sustain like perfectly great energy when you just keep pounding and stacking pressure and stress and more workload on top. Nobody could do it. Nobody can. You have to take breaks. You have to establish boundaries. So I think that's a very, very powerful next step for all of us to consider as we unlock our digital potential. Is what are those boundaries that are going to optimize your life? What are those boundaries that are going to help you reclaim your day, reclaim your health, reclaim time with your family? So, that would be what I'd say about that for today, Ken.
That sounds good. I always learn something in every show we do, Kyle. I don't know about you, but I walk away with good tips and things. And I think that's one of my favorite things about the shows is learning from you, learning from these conversations. And really, I'm hoping that out there, whatever channel you might be watching this on, and it is out there on 4 channels, usually at a time right now, that if you have anything that has helped you navigate this sort of way things work now. I don't even want to call it the new normal, Kyle. I think that's a very harmful phrase because it's really misleading to people, and I think it's holding people back. This is just how it is right now. So get on with it. Is sort of my thinking. It's the way I operate and encourage my family and friends and work colleagues and everything to do. So in this way that we're living now, I don't know, the challenges that we face in balance in our lives, which is key, are enormous. And I don't want people to think this is easy, and I don't want them to think it's impossible. There is a very happy place somewhere in the middle there, and as soon as you find it, it'll move, and you'll have to rebalance. It's like if you're standing on, you ever see the jugglers and folks that do balancing acts? They're standing on a drum with a board on it and juggling. We're all doing that right now.
Absolutely.
So that image is in my mind frequently. I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm doing. And then there's 5 more people all trying to do it around you and pass the balls at the same time and nobody fall. Don't fall. So, but you know what? You're gonna fall. Dust yourself off. Get back up, and get on with it. I would like to do one thing before we close today. So we've talked a lot about this concept of establishing digital boundaries, tips and tricks that might help you do so. What about it? The blend there is very much between the work and the personal. I know, Kyle, that you are spending a lot of time right now telepresent in virtual boardrooms, in virtual meeting spaces. I would like to do at least one kind of tip or trick, or maybe if you just want to share a personal experience that you've had, however you want to do it, in that sort of work scenario where you've applied a lot of these things that we've talked about today and in past shows successfully. I think that would be inspirational to folks, and because you're doing it as well as anybody. I know, right? You're just out
Thank you.
there.
Mhm.
You're leading the pack in how to apply all the things we talk about on this show, and it's transformational. And I would love to hear something about that from you.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. It's funny. I think about tomorrow. Right now, I'm probably averaging around 2 to 3 talks a week, where there's keynotes or dropping in as a advisor or a panelist on discussions. And then outside of that, we're probably doing, of the 4 days a week, we're probably doing, sorry, of the 4 days, of the 5 days, it was a 4 day
7.
week last week, I know,
No.
7 day week. Well, it's true, because actually I do a lot of things on Saturdays, because that's when people are doing more of the self-learning time, where Monday to Friday is corporate, Saturday, Sunday is actually more self-learning, self-development, which, as you know, Kent, you and I, we kind of cross over, because we're doing technical hard skill stuff in our work, but we're also doing soft skills, which is around leadership, and sometimes that actually blends into this work-life balance. So I noticed that the topics that we discuss is, which is when it's more about home life and personal, it tends to be the weekend, and then very corporate business oriented, it tends to be during the week. But what tomorrow is actually quite fascinating, because I've got 4 talks back to back. I start at 5:30 a.m. I'm speaking to um, leaders in Asheville, North Carolina. There's a huge community of leaders there. I go straight to Switzerland, where I'm working in the banking world. And then I go from the banking world to Germany, where we're talking about the future of education. And then I'm going from that to Central America, where we're talking about corporate leadership. That's all. That's all sort of back to
Wait,
back.
wait. Which flight could you book to do that in the
You
real physical world?
You can't. I mean, this week's been ridiculous. Last week was interesting. Same thing. Like I was in Australia, then I was in Europe, then I was in South America. So it's like, and it's impossible. It's impossible to do this. All you have to do is work with the time zones, but the impact is incredible. The biggest tip that I've learned, the biggest thing in wanting to actively, I may be a little different than most. I'm actually seeing this entire situation as an opportunity to create more impact. I think what we're doing right now, I think the ability to connect with people, I think I'm trying to say yes to every single opportunity, or even put it out there to create the opportunity to meet audiences. Because there needs to be role modeling right now. There's role modeling on mindset. There's role modeling on energy. There's role modeling on action. Digitize is built this way. Kent, you and I are wired this way, to take action, to move things forward. With all of these events, with all of these situations, whether they're corporate, whether they are just information give, whether we're running actual strategic sessions, what I've noticed is my number one tip is you've got to be prepared to bring your energy. If you're not prepared to set the state and the tone, and it's kind of interesting, like I would advise everybody right now to go and take an improv class, even if it's virtual. I think, Ken, you brought this up in a season 1 thing, which was, but I really think whether it's acting, whether it's voice or articulation or any of those kinds of things, the reason why I think I'm getting so much joy out of this, and the reason why I think that, like you and I are getting brought into these situations, is because there's a level of energy and presence that we can bring to any situation. Now, it doesn't matter what kind of meeting you're having. If you show up with the necessity that this is an important meeting, if you show up with purpose, if you show up with energy, if you show up with clarity, I'm here to deliver this message. If you show up with that level of productivity, which is I'm here to get people to move forward. You go back to our season 1 and see the episodes on MTP, like your own personal purpose. When you're showing up in this way, my number one tip, it's interesting the feedback that comes after these talks or sessions, which is, wow, energy was up, but that really helped motivate me. I really took action. I applied that tool. And what I'm learning in this environment is that if we're not modeling and role modeling it, it just becomes another fact sharing mission. Oh, here's another fact that I heard. And but I don't look like I've embodied it. It doesn't look like I'm applying it myself. So the biggest learning that I've had, apart from, we can go deep on another thing about like formats and tools and how to show up, but the number one thing that I think that is setting, say, myself and you and others apart from the general everybody being online is that is demonstrating that you're actually excited to be there. It's not like another Zoom meeting, another webinar, another talk. There's that energy, or there's like, I cannot believe that we've just had 45 minutes of your time and we're able to talk to you and share tools, and that someone listening to this is going to take something from here and it's going to make their life better. What an opportunity. What an opportunity. That's the number one tip that I would share right now is really bring your intention to what you're doing, and pretend as much as you can. Like you've got this opportunity to stand in front of an audience that are just waiting to hear from you and to learn from you and to absorb from you, collaborate or interact with you. And I promise you that it's just going to start to expand. This experience will become more joyful for you.
Yeah, I think that is a fantastic set of tips that we can extract from there. And ages ago now, it's been a while, I started doing the virtual backgrounds and things, and being able to put my slides up over my shoulder and bring in guests and all kinds of fun stuff right inside of a Zoom call. And I was like, just pin me. I'm here. I don't, and they'll be like, oh, I'll give you the rights to share a screen. I'll be like, no, I don't need it. Pin me. Everything that you see here in this little box, that's what you're going to experience. And I've given a lot of tips before on how to do this in terms of speaking in these digital and virtual venues, and just little things about how you work the camera, back to that acting concept, or improv, how you can think on your feet. That's the key thing about improv. You can't ever freeze up. You don't want to ramble endlessly, but at the same time, there's this one little thing that I want to remind folks, and I've experienced this a lot on these types of on Zoom calls and things. There's a feeling that someone must be making noise, right? Talking, doing something, making something happen, showing a slide. That's not true. The empty spaces in these types of conversations are important, and they need not be awkward. Taking a moment to compose yourself, your thoughts, and then speaking thoughtfully and mindfully in response to something someone asks you is perfectly fine. You do not have to just fill the dead air. And if people will sort of open their eyes to this, the spaces can have more gravitas. They can be more authentic. And I don't think that's normal for people for some reason over these Zoom or any type of digital connection this way. And it's the same if you're standing on a stage and you're presenting. If you just stop and you take a second and then speak, it has a massive impact on the people on the other side. When I did that right there, anyone who's watching this felt a little pause, and yeah, this is what you need to learn to do, to work with a camera and remember there are people on the other side of that thing. So I love those, Kyle, and I think about them all the time. I practice every day. I mess up every day, and I keep on going. I think it's just great fun. So let's start to wind today down. And do you have anything in particular, last words, tips, feelings, a look ahead to the next week that you'd like to share with folks?
I'm just super excited to be able to engage, with you, Kent, as we always get to do every week, to engage with this audience, this growing community. Thank you to everybody for getting us past this subscriber level. Please keep sharing. Please keep linking, liking. I noticed on LinkedIn today, some people today were sharing the program and sharing sound bites from the program as well, which is excellent. So there's more content being distributed out. So please subscribe, share, go back into the other seasons, take a look. There's a lot of rich content. It's going to feel to me like what we've been talking about over the last, almost 10 weeks is that it's going to remain relevant for at least a couple more years. It really is. Like, we're at the beginning of this conversation. This is a shared conversation. So my biggest thing is there's a possibility to have a lot of fun and joy with this. There really is. Keep watching this program. Kent will bring amazing tools and techniques and hacks into software systems and programs and what you can do to curate this amazing little, rectangle that we live inside of right now. But, until then, just remember that there's a version of yourself waiting to be digitized and waiting to be unlocked. And there's a potential inside of you that is ready to be activated. And we are really hoping that we're getting inside and speaking to a part of you that's going to go and take action with this stuff. And we're just super excited to see you again next week. Thanks so much, Ken.
That's awesome. Thank you, Kyle. I'm really happy with how today's episode came out. And at the beginning of the episode, we talked a little bit about beginning to get some tips and tools around orchestrating. I loved the word you just used, by the way, curating this little rectangle. I don't think I've heard you say that before.
Yeah.
So curating these little rectangles that we now live in to deliver into all kinds of venues. I think that would be an amazing next show. We went in a different direction in today's show, but I loved it. I hope everybody out there enjoyed it. So Kyle, if you want, then why don't we make note, and in that next show, let's talk a little bit to people about how they can curate this output. There's many tools. And then lastly, folks, we did pass the 100 subscriber mark this week, which was super exciting for us. We got our own personalized URL. So now it's youtube.com/digitized.live, which is fantastic. You don't get that until you hit 100 subscribers, and yay. we're it's not about the mass, but it's about knowing that people are finding value in what we do. So please do click that little, it looks like this, that little thumbs up button. And then somewhere on these videos and feeds, there's usually our logo. If you click on that, you can subscribe and watch and share the videos. That's what we need so we can get the messages out. More than anything, that's how social media works. And so we really are grateful to all of you that are commenting, liking, subscribing, and sharing. It means the world to us, and it really makes it worth it every single time. So with that, I will say goodbye, and Kyle,
thank you so much, everyone. See you again next week.
all right, turn. All right, bye everybody.